Time to welcome back Christina Brady from Blacktower Financial Management. How are the markets at the moment then?
Considering the ECB cut rates today, it's quite flat. The FTSE is at 8319, but no, there's not much going on in the markets at all. It does slow down usually for Christmas, and doesn't really start to do anything till sort of the second week of January.
That's because all the brokers go on their skiing holidays.
They do. They all go away. But
you
there's
remember.
been lots of going on in the markets, as we saw the ECB cut rates today. And that's the fourth rate cut since June. So they cut it by another 0.25% to 3%. And they expect to cut them even further in 2025.
And we've been hearing that, haven't we, that's going to be sort of a trend. They're expecting that in the States as well. There's another one on the way, we expect, in the States before the end of the year. But they are talking about them continuing next year as well. How does that translate to our pockets, though?
Right, okay. For the ECB, the reason they've done that is because growth, the estimate of growth for next year has fallen from 1.3 to 1.1, and you've got lots of problems in Europe. You've got France, so the central bank in France expects growth of 0 for France for this quarter as it grapples with its political crisis. As you know, there is now no prime minister, and Macron has got to announce one. Without that, they're facing 2025 without a valid budget plan, so that can't go on. You've got Germany, which again is still suffering. So that's why the ECB is cutting rates. It's trying to stimulate growth, trying to make people spend more money, take out more loan. Consumer prices increased the most in 7 months to 2.7% in November. But it's unlikely to stop the Fed cutting rates before the end of the year because we've got a cooling job market in the States. I think that unemployment went up to 4.2% or 4.27%. So they are going to cut rates. The only place where they may not cut rates is as quickly as the UK. The Bank of England has said it's unlikely there'll be any cuts before the end of the year. It's been badly spooked by the budget. As we know, the UK budget was a complete and utter disaster, has impacted. We've got lots of businesses moving out of the UK. Lots of them that were planning expansion no longer are planning to expand. We've got people laying off staff because they can't afford to employ them anymore. So the budget in the UK was bad for the economy. We've got gilts at an all-time high. However, that does mean that the pound is on course to reach its pre-Brexit levels. Yeah,
8-year high against the euro.
Yeah, it hit 121.57. They're saying next year it could even reach 130. They reckon 125.
Those were the days,
at least,
weren't they?
Or 130. So that'd be very good if you get paid in sterling and you bring it over here and convert it to euros.
Well, it's great for people on UK pension. They get it paid here, isn't it, I guess?
Yes, it is. So that's that. And we've had lots of rate cuts. We've had Bank of Canada that did a 50 basis point cut in its rates on Wednesday. So that came down to 3.25, and that's the second 50 basis point rate cut in a row. We've got Switzerland. That's had several rate cuts this year. So they're all trying to cut rates. They're trying to stimulate the economy. They're worried. Let's see what happens. In Spain, the IBEX is hovering amongst near its highest level since January 2010. It's up 20% in a year, but that's the same as other European indices. So we can't say that Spain's doing exceptionally well. The DAX is up roughly the same, and so is the Italian MIB.
See, this is kind of weird. As a layperson, I don't quite understand. If Germany and France are doing so terribly, why are they not?
Yeah, but it's not only made up of German companies or French companies. Mm-hmm. It's like the FTSE 100.
Right.
It's not made up just of UK companies. So within the IBEX, you've got top performers, and this is across the world, has been airline companies. So IAG, which is BA, Vueling, Iberia and Aer Lingus, that's done very, very, very well. If you look at US Airways, they've done well as well. So you've got Delta, United. The ones in Spain that haven't done really well are Repsol. There's a solar company, a green company. They haven't done very well on the IBEX since September 23. The markets have been very buoyant. They're going up.
Inditex always seem to do very well in Spain. Ferrovial, they basically own airports and building company. And the banks, obviously, CaixaBank's doing very well.
And Sabadell's up a lot. And the reason for that is because of the proposed takeover from BBVA. So that price has gone up a lot. Whether it will happen or not, Sabadell don't want it. But usually these things do happen. So we'll have to wait and see. But it is good news if the sterling euro does go up to about 130, especially for expats. If you're sending money back, or if you've sold in your house here and you're moving back to the UK, not so good. But if you live here, it will give you a boost, because no matter where you live in the world, prices have gone up so much in the last 2-3 years. It's unbelievable. Inflation has just doubled the cost of your foods, etc. So any money you can make is better than nothing. So although that doesn't bode well for the UK.
Yeah.
But, Labour seem to be making a mess every single day. Every time they open their mouth, it's more of a mess.
Well, it hasn't seemed to matter that we've changed government, because it just seems to be a mess anyway.
If anything, it's got worse. I think people just should have stuck with the devil they knew.
We did for quite a long time.
Labour seem to be trying to build lots of houses. They're not abiding by planning rules, building rules. People are upset because in Wales they built a whole new housing estate, and 5 out of 7 people they gave it to, it was meant to be for the homeless in Wales, went to migrants. So they're not happy. You've got loads of homeless, it went to migrants. So we'll have to see what happens there. We've got the Syrian thing now that Assad is going. Germany is saying that all the Syrians should go home because they fled because of the regime that was there. Same is happening across Europe. However, most Syrians are saying, well, especially in the UK, well, no, we don't want to go back. Life is quite good here. We get loads of, help. We don't want to go back. And I think what is annoying is the papers are just sort of playing it down. They got rid of Assad, but what if they put in his place? It could be something that is a lot worse.
We don't know yet, do we really?
The government that's in there is on the terrorist list. The head of the government has a $10 million bounty on his head for terrorist-related atrocities. So it's not out with the old, in with the new, and the new is good. It's out with the old, in with the new. The new could be even worse. They've called moderate,
isn't it, when we see these regime changes? Difficulties in Libya, difficulties in Iraq also.
If you look at the mess we've made of that area by interfering in the West, bringing down governments, and sometimes these countries don't need brutal dictators, but they need a strong government to keep them to keep things in line, to make things ticking over. And once you lose that and turmoil comes in, you see what we've had happening in Libya, in the other countries there, where people are a lot worse off. Lots of people try to leave the country, and it causes problems across the world.
Well, there are various situations in Africa as well, different African countries being destabilised by certain bigger powers, which
exactly,
also,
they did it in South America, if you remember, I think it was the 80s, 70s and 80s. America destabilised South America, and it's never, ever very good. But we don't seem to learn from our mistakes, so we'll have to wait and see.
We don't. It's all right for Muskie, isn't he? His SpaceX now valued at $350 billion. Not like he didn't make enough money when Trump was elected again.
Richest man on the planet, is he now, I think?
And off the planet also.
Yep, he's done very, very well. Good for him. He obviously picked the right side. He knew what he was doing.
It's the biggest ever startup as well. You have to forget that it was a startup, don't you?
Yeah, you do. You forget. He's done phenomenally well. What can you say, really, to be worth that much?
We are wondering, actually, whether he might have an eye on the presidentship in future years.
He can't. You've got to be born in the US.
Oh, he wasn't, was he? That's right, yeah.
Exactly, so he can't. So don't even go there. You can't do that. That's why he's in this position he is.
Unless Trump changes that law.
Talking of Trump, he's invited China's leader to his inauguration.
It'll be interesting, won't it? Will he be telling him about the tariffs and how much he's going to put on them?
They'll be schmoozing along. And then you've got Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook Meta, who, stopped Trump being allowed to go on Facebook, etc. He's now crumbled and given in.
He's given him $1 million.
They have. They've said he's kissed the ring. I don't know what that means, but he's given him $1 million towards his inauguration fund. Lots of people do that. Usually they raise about 50, 60 million towards that. So he's there, and he's gone to see Trump.
I think that's a Pope reference rather than anything else that might be thought. But you could perhaps say something else, that kiss the ring reference. But I guess he wants a bit of what Muskie's got, because obviously his association with Donald Trump hasn't hurt him at all. So Mark Zuckerberg may be thinking, I shouldn't have done this earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Why would it? We'll have to wait and see, but they're all coming to. There's been lots of them that have gone to see him. There was some of the people that were on the TV channels that were totally anti-Trump. As you know, most of the US media had a left-wing bias, and the only news channel that didn't was Fox. Well, some of those who worked for the other channels have been trotted down to Mar-a-Lago to say hello to Trump and shake his hand and try and keep their jobs, because most of those channels have got little or no people watching them, so they're up for sale, and it's rumoured that Elon Musk may buy NBSC or MSN, whatever it is. So we'll see what happens there. But they earn huge amounts of money for doing not much. They're earning like tens of millions a year. And if you haven't got people watching, if advertisers aren't bringing in the revenue, you can't carry on with these people. So I think we're going to see a lot of people being nice to Trump. It will be different to his first term. I think people who were calling him all these horrible names before the election must now eat their words. He is none of those things.
Well, Time magazine like him again. I'm sure he is some of the things that people say, but maybe not all of them,
No, he is not. No, they went to extremes. I'm sorry. It was pure and utter, vicious, malicious lies, I think, most of it. No one's brilliant. No one's good. No.
Well, he says he is, but anyway.
He doesn't say he is. He does admit he's got faults if you actually listen to him.
Best president ever. Yeah.
If you listen to the press, then you wouldn't know that. But no one's brilliant. But obviously the American people think he can turn it around for him, so I think we've got to give him that chance.
Yeah, they weren't feeling the return of the economy in the way that perhaps the Democrats thought they might. What about
Bidenomics did not work. I can tell you.
Yeah, what about Bitcoin? That certainly seems to have worked. And they're talking about the fact that it may well continue to increase next year. I mean, it's hit that $100,000 mark.
It has, yeah.
It's still scary, though, isn't it?
And it's the latest surge comes after a cooling in US inflation and growing concern and growing expectations of a Fed cut, which has fueled investor optimism. So we'll have to wait and see there. There's lots of different Bitcoins out there, isn't there? So there's all these different ones. And I think Elon Musk's favourite is the one I call Doge. But I'm not sure what it actually is.
Yeah, it's Doge. It stands for that the name of the department that he's going to work for that are going to do all the cutting, and I can't remember what it's called, but anyway.
And it's got little doggers,
That's
little
right.
sort of things.
So we prefer to call it doggy coin.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I call it.
Gold obviously has been doing well with the speculation over the central banks and also the situation in Syria. As we know, in a crisis, gold always does better.
Yeah, it does. Volatile is seen as a safe haven. So if anything spooks the markets or they think there's going to be any change they don't know about, people go to gold and then they come out. So the price of gold is quite volatile, up and down, depending on what's happening in the markets. So if you're holding gold again. And you want to sell it, you're at a good price. If you're just buying it, you've bought it at a high. Yeah. But that's one of those things. It's there. It's a tangible asset. As long as you're buying physical gold. I think sometimes there were scams on the internet where you could buy gold and you got a little certificate that came through the post saying that you'd bought whatever gold. But where was that gold? If you ever wanted it.
That would always worry me because quite often they disappear on a plane to Russia.
Yeah, exactly. If I was going to buy gold, I'd go to the vending machines that you can there. Right. And then at least you've got the little nuggets if you need to sell them. So I prefer with gold something physical, but it's up to people. People trade gold. Obviously, they do. Everyone trades every commodity, so it depends what you want to have in your portfolio. Talking of portfolios, just quickly, we did touch on other markets. India's been a booming market.
To it. Absolutely, yeah. What's happening?
It's just its economic growth is slowing down. It was predicted to rise by the Central Bank of India about 7% next year. They're now saying that it is going to be about 5.4. It's still growing a lot quicker than others, but it's slowing down. And we saw that in China. We had phenomenal growth, and then suddenly it slowed down, and then suddenly it stalled.
Well, it's never very good, is it? If it grows very, very quickly, they don't say that that's a really good thing.
Yeah, so I don't know, I'm not saying that India's going to stall. I'm just saying, if you are holding India, hopefully you've got a diversified portfolio, and if the growth does slow down, you're not fully exposed to India and you've got other things as well. But just one of those things on the markets that people need to know about.
OK, now we mentioned about Europe and the Eurozone. Quarter on quarter then, GDP growth rate inching up in the third quarter of the year, increase in government and household spending. Looks like we are starting to spend more then. We understand that Spaniards will be spending €120 more on food in December during the rest of the year, spending more this year on Christmas than they have in previous years since the pandemic. That means we're starting to feel good about things.
Are we starting to feel good, or is it just because prices have gone up, we're spending more?
Might be that, yeah. It could be
Let's get this
everything's
into
just more
perspective,
expensive.
shall we? Obviously, there's always people that are doing well and there's people that aren't doing so well, but we've still got a huge divide between the two. If you look at the UK, I'm not sure what the figures they're thinking they're going to spend this Christmas. I don't know if it's up or down. I haven't seen that yet. But I think hopefully 2025... we can enter that with a little bit more of optimism. 2024, I think investors and people are worried about recession, worried about inflation, the impact of the previous couple of years of inflation on their money, elections across the world, including the US, and all the tensions, geopolitical tensions across the world. So maybe 2025 can give us a little bit of a respite.
Well, of course, Trump will be coming to power as well, which generally works well with those in big business and high finance. In Britain, however, annual rent for a newly let UK home is now £3,240 higher than 2021. So that's rents up by 27% since the pandemic. Earnings have increased by just 19%. As you mentioned before, Britain is struggling.
It is, and the number of rental properties has fallen because the government has made it very unattractive to hold rental properties. What annoys me is people are renting. They're paying, say they live in a property that's worth $250,000. Their rent is a lot higher than if they had a mortgage and they were buying that property. But the banks won't lend them the money because they say they can't afford the mortgage, yet they're affording rent that is usually £1,000 or more pounds a month more expensive. So that is fundamentally wrong.
That's a crazy situation.
Governments like Labour, when they say they're all for the people, should be looking at things like this. They shouldn't be trying to, and the farmers in the UK, bringing back inheritance tax. That is fundamentally so unfair.
No, they're all out in Westminster yesterday in the tractors, but we've seen that across Europe. It's not just Britain, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, but that was in Europe. It was for other reasons. This is in England. They are penalising them. And I think what Labour should have done is said farms are still exempt from inheritance tax, no matter what their value, as long as they're passed on down the family line and they're not sold. Say someone dies and you inherit that farm, you can't sell it for 20 years or else you incur inheritance tax based on the value when that person died. Not start to penalise them. Without farmers, we have no food. Without no food, you have a disgruntled population and you will have social unrest. So yeah,
I think it's about wanting the money now, not in 20 years' time, isn't it? Meanwhile...
yes, the UK government does want the money now, but I think that is wrong. I think they're looking to themselves because they are spending so much money rather than looking after the people. And if you look at most of their manifesto pledges, they've broken most of them and done things they said they weren't. They said they weren't going to raise national insurance. They have. They said they weren't going to they were going to scrap student tuition fees. They're raising those. So they've broken nearly every single promise they made. And I said this all along. I've said, if you go into government, you do a manifesto, what you say you have to stick to. And this is why it really annoys me when people slag off Donald Trump. You have politicians who lie through their backsides, and yet people fall for it. And when they don't live up to those expectations, people get annoyed, but they don't get that angry because they're so used to politicians lying. Where someone like Trump, He just says it as it is, and people don't like it. They seem to like to be lied to.
Well, his record was quite good last time he was in power. He did actually do a lot of what he said he would do. So
exactly.
you'd have to hope that he'd do the same this time.
You've got the politicians that aren't. You've got that across the whole spectrum. You've got it in France, you've got it in Spain, you've got it in the UK, you've got it in Canada. We need Germany. A fundamental shift in that, but we won't go into that now.
No.
But
what we will talk about, though, is the car market. There's another 10,000 German jobs at risk. Bosch and a number of other issues. The European Conservatives are demanding urgent action.
Really,
the EU car makers are falling behind in their race to electrify. None of this is helping the economies of the big economies in Europe.
No, and what's happening is car manufacturers are withholding deliveries of new petrol cars until January to try and hit the EV quotas. And I think enough is enough. Governments like the EU, etc., should stop trying to force cars on people that they don't want. You've got used cars in the UK for EV cars have absolutely plummeted. The average fall in value of new EVs after 1 year in the UK is 50%. And there's one car which I've never heard of, which is like a Fisher Ocean, which is values down in 67.2% in 1 year. New, it cost £47,650. After 1 year, it was only worth $15,625. And what's happening in the companies, leasing companies are hemorrhaging money. As soon as a leased car, EV, comes up to be sold on the second-hand market, they can't sell them. They're losing so much money, and there's no end in sight for this residual value crisis across Europe, across the UK, across the world, experts are warning. And leasing companies are looking at ways to stop their exposure to the used EV market, which means they need to go back to petrol cars. And I think the EU, etc., need to admit they've made a fundamental mistake. EVs aren't good for the planet. If you look what lithium mining is doing, if you look at human slavery caused by mining these things, if you look at trying to dispose of the batteries, if you look at the amount of money people are losing, EVs are not good. You've got petrol engines that are environmentally friendly now that should be pushed. You've got hydro cars, which we should be going towards. However, obviously they can't make so much money out of them because they can't control them as much as electric vehicles. I think they're too proud to admit that they have completely cocked up on this one. And
it looks like they're in too deep by now.
They are in too deep, but they've obviously got too much backhanders from doing it.
Fisker Ocean are they're listed as an American automotive company, but founded by a Danish chap, Henrik Fisker, but they're made in Austria, in Graz. But I haven't seen too many of them on the roads.
No, I haven't. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I feel sorry for people that were taken in by this whole EV is good for the environment rubbish and have bought these cars. It's a huge amount of money to lose if you've bought a car.
Those are big drops that you've been talking about.
They are huge drops. I'd be crying. I'm sorry, most people, £47,000 is a hell of a lot of money. And then a year later for it only to be worth $15,000. If you bought a house for £47,000 and in a year you could only sell it for 15, you'd call it a housing crisis. It'd be a slump. There'd be complete and utter mayhem.
You could buy a house for £47,000 these days. It would be a brilliant thing.
But with cars, they try and keep it quiet. They don't publish it because they've been pushing it so hard. So let's see what happens there. But all that doom and gloom, it's not all doom and gloom. No. There are some very good things to look forward to in 2025.
A few comments from the BayRadio audience. If only we had Christina instead of that, I can't say that, but and he's talking about the UK Prime Minister. Love her. Spot on as always, says Matt. And from Mark as well, what did he was telling me off? Oh, yes, I do agree with Christina on the motor car argument, he said. You were talking about the how quickly EVs prices fall from new.
Yeah, that is sad. But, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, as I said. But don't think that, everything is doom and gloom. Hopefully next year things will get better. We've got AI, so that's one good thing that we can look forward to. You could invest in next year.
Well, I think it is. Obviously it's a positive thing for big business and high finance that Donald Trump is back in the White House. Regardless of what anybody might think, it has a positive effect. So.
It is, there's a strong demand. We've got Nvidia, obviously, their chips are used in data centers for AI, and that's been doing very, very well. So, and there's new companies coming up all the time. So if you want to take out some sort of exposure, you can either buy a ETF, which has a mixture of technology companies, AI companies, or you can go into one of the indices you've got a European one that has technology companies, or you can just look at a good AI fund. So there's stuff there. Also, you've got peace talks with Vladimir Putin. US President-elect Donald Trump has said he will end the war in Ukraine. Even Ukraine's what do you call him? Is he a president? Has said that Zelensky has said, yeah, he wants peace now. So hopefully that will come. And China has still got economic challenges. You've got property prices falling. You've got property companies going bust. But hopefully, if Trump and the president of China get together, have a good talk, the tariffs won't be too bad. He's threatened 60% tariffs on all Chinese goods, but hopefully that will...
I think at one point he said 300%, but yes, he has come down because he does say these things.
But what China is doing is he's taking measures to increase and encourage consumption within China itself. Yep. And it's giving funds directly to households in China, which makes them feel better, which then could actually counteract any tariffs that are brought in place. We do need something happening in Europe. We do need a little bit more settlement with governments, etc. We do need the EU to get more in touch with what the general public feel, but let's wait and see.
Well, we've got a German election coming up pretty early in the new year as well, so that's got to get itself sorted out first of all. And it's not going to come back, the economy, very quickly anytime soon, is it?
No. We've got healthcare spending, demand for obesity drugs. We've seen that has surged in 2024. We've got the diabetic drug, which I can never say its name of, that people inject themselves with, and then they lose weight and they look like skeletons. But it seems to be all the rage now.
So you think we're still good for pharma then? Big tech, big pharma, still good to go for investments?
Yep, exactly. US, obviously, equities. We should see returns coming across the whole spectrum now. So just not technology companies, but we should see growth in mid-cap, large-cap, smaller-cap companies across the US equities in general. And that is quite a good thing. The only thing I would say is green initiatives. I think that... their popularity will start to fall. I think people haven't fallen for this whole green agenda. They understand that some of the things that are being pushed on us, like wind farms, are doing more damage to the environment, and these solar panel fields where they chop down all of nature and make it all full of these solar panels is not good for the environment. So I think things that are to do with green issues, funds that are invested in these green issues may not perform as well as other funds do across the market. If you're in infrastructure funds, they have suffered dramatically since interest rates have gone up. Now interest rates are falling. Infrastructure funds should take off because they need loans to finance their projects. So at the moment that's cheap. So if you want to go in there. So there are lots of things on the horizon that could make it really, really good for 2025.